Hello and welcome to another edition of Superhero Movie Review Time. I'm your host Grant Liston, a very bored Englishman, and this week I want to talk to you about the DCEU and the very starting point with Man of Steel. In 2013, director Zack Snyder teamed up with writer David S. Goyer to bring us the first instalment into the DC cinematic universe. The Man of Steel actually grossed $668 million worldwide. So the film starts off with the destruction of Krypton, which I hated. Straight off the bat, sitting there watching it, I was completely underwhelmed. I was like, because when I think of the destruction of Krypton and everything goes on there with Jor-El and Zod and the planets exploding, I always go back to the cartoon. I always go back to the animated series where it's almost like a Cloud City escape from Star Wars, where it's like futuristic cars and space shuttles and laser guns. It's like, yeah, awesome, in your face sci-fi stuff, and that's what I geared myself up to. This is like some kind of Avatar meets Matrix sequels. Heavy on the CGI and like the weird Flappy Bird thing that Russell Crowe flies. Not a fan at all. This is, in my opinion, a really, really ugly scene. It was like the same colour coding from 300. It was just like musky bronze everywhere. It was rough. This all comes to an end when Russell Crowe's character Jor-El is killed by the best character in the entire film, and that's Michael Shannon's General Zod. This guy takes this film and gives an 11 out of 10 on performance. He just goes for it. He is psychotic and just mind-bogglingly confusing in just terms of, how am I going to talk at the moment? Really, really subtly through the eyebrows, or heresy! It's a great performance. I just love it. I love everything about it. Now I'd like to play a very quick game which is called Who Shatnered It Better, in which I take two scenes and we try and figure out who did the best William Shatner performance. So, in the red corner is General Zod from Man of Steel.
I will find him!
Versus the Green Goblin from Spider-Man.
Finish it! Finish it!
Zod.
I will find him!
Goblin.
Finish it!
Good stuff, good stuff. Oh yeah, and Kal-El, a baby at this point who grows up to be Clark Kent, he's stuffed in a pod with something called the Codex, which is basically, I don't know. Like, if I was to explain this to someone who has no interest in superhero movies or sci-fi movies, it's basically a skull with the entire history of the world in it. Is that right? Is that right? And basically, spoiler alert for the end, they break this skull down using wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey crap, and they implant it in Kal-El's cells for reasons that are never explained. So, I hope I've done a good job there. The Codex is really, really confusing and mentioned 3 times. Give or take. It's kind of like a big deal and never really cared about. Meanwhile, Zod is actually captured and imprisoned in metal dicks. Yep, metal dicks. And is sent up into space into the Phantom Zone, which, if you're not a fan of Superman, is basically an otherworldly prison, and it's been memed to hell. It's actually hysterical. The film then does this like erratic jumping around crap, which Christopher Nolan loves doing, and I said this in Batman Begins, I'm not a fan of this style of filming, okay? It's very, very jarring to me, because one minute he's a baby with his dick hanging out, and then he's like in his 20s and he's working an oil rig, and he's a child discovering his powers and that he can see like human skeletons. And then he's working in a bar and everyone's treating him like a dick, and then he's saving kids on a school bus which goes off a bridge and goes into the water. This does, however, bring up a really, really controversial scene, because Jonathan Kent, played pretty well actually by Kevin Costner, he is talking to Clark about the ramifications of him saving all the kids on the school bus, because he's an alien. This is like the answer to I'll be alone in the universe. As a parent, he wants to keep his child safe. If the government find out they're harbouring an alien, his life is over. Just he'll be like experimented, tortured, held in captivity. It'll be a nasty ordeal, and no parent wants to see that happen. So when Clark asks the question, should I have let them die? And he replied with, maybe. The outrage was incredible. I personally, I don't agree with like they said, just let them die, but I see where Jonathan Kent is coming from. He doesn't want his son to expose himself. Or expose himself, either one. No, don't do that. But I also see why everyone's so pissed. Like, you've just told Superman to kill, and we'll get to that part later. I think it's a good character growth moment, showing how he progresses and how he becomes the man he's going to be. And it really annoys me that they jump into the future again and he's an adult, and you're like, let the scene settle! Just start, middle, and end. It's really simple. Like, the whole back and forth thing he did in Memento really did work. I just don't think it works for an origin superhero movie. So yeah, as I say, he ends up like his future self ends up working in the Arctic with the military, and they're digging up some kind of like submarine or spaceship kind of thing. They're like, "Ooh, what is this?" This annoys me because he's walking around this military base and everyone's like, "Hey, Joe, take over those bags. They're really heavy." Joe. So he's managed to somehow illegally falsify his documents. I'm pretty sure that Superman is a crime fighter, so he now has criminal underworld contacts who can give him false passport, driving license, etc. And second of all, really? A phony ID is enough to fool the military? Nah, not. And for a mission like this, no, I'm not buying. This is one of those. Clearly, they had no idea how to get Clark on base, and so they fumbled around a few ideas in the writing room, went, we'll go with that, no one's asking questions. But I always ask those questions. This does introduce us to Lois Lane, played by Amy Adams. Yeah, it's a good Lois Lane. She's determined, she's a feisty go-getting reporter. It's Lois Lane. It's pretty much ticks all the boxes so far. So Lois ends up following Clark in the dead of night and finds the spaceship, and she's attacked by the onboard security protocol. Clark saves her life and then leaves her to die. That's right, he saves her life by using his heat vision to, cauterize a wound. Well done, top-notch Superman points for you. He then takes the ship and leaves her in the middle of the night, in the middle of the fucking Arctic, and fucks off with the ship. It's not give and take, man. You're Superman. You could have taken her back to base and then got the ship and fucked off. Clark then goes on to meet the ship's AI, which is played by Jor-El, Russell Crowe. Okay, it's a good way to keep him back in the film, fair enough, but are you telling me there wasn't enough room on the memory drive to put his mother on that list? Jor-El tells him about the history of his people and what he can do now that these cells have been drinking in the sun's radiation, so he's now superhuman, It all kind of ties in quite nicely. And one thing I do kind of like, even though it's still goofy to me, is the costume. I think the Superman costume sucks. I'm not a Superman fan. I look at Superman, the face of DC, I look at Spider-Man, the face of Marvel. I'm not a fan of either. I like the darker, grittier stuff. So I look at both their costumes and think, kind of goofy, not really a fan of either. And yet they both cause so much controversy when they're not done right. My point here I'm making is I'm not really fussed at how the costume looks. I'm more interested in how he gets the costume. So I look at, say, Amazing Spider-Man or the Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire and Sam Raimi directing. He made his own suit, right, which is believable to a point, okay? I can just about buy that. but I actually think that the Spider-Man Homecoming way of him being given a suit by Tony Stark with all the bells and whistles makes sense. He's a poor kid in New York, can't afford anything, and Tony Stark pimps him out. That makes sense. I look at Superman and think, well, okay, A, who gives him the inspiration, and B, who's really going to make that? So it makes sense that his dad gives it to him as a Kryptonian flight suit kind of thing. I don't know if that's actually how it happens in the comics. I don't really care. But it makes sense. It's a symbol. It's all the blah blah. It works. I liked it. So now we come to the tornado scene. Now, just like with the school bus scene earlier, I do agree with Jonathan Kent. He doesn't want to put his son in any danger where people could discover he is an alien and the things he can do. They want to keep that secret. I get that, I truly understand. But this scene is just handled wrong. I don't know what it is, it just drives me insane. From the whole... Okay, say what you want about Superman, right? But Jonathan Kent has a Superman or superhero complex, right? He seriously has a death wish at this point. Like, he really, really annoys me in this scene because, first of all, Clark could quite easily go zip, 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 and no one would see because they're kind of distracted by the fucking tornado going on. And it just, like, he puts himself in this ridiculous situation and then is like... I get it's meant to be dramatic. I understand what the scene is trying to do. But I would have done it differently. I would have wrote it so that in this scene in the 90s when this happens, Clark is trying to repress his powers. He's trying to stop being the Superman, even though he's not technically Superman yet. He's just stopping being awesome, okay? He's deciding to be a young man in his late teens. He's decided to go for a bit of a boozy weekend with the lads. Really English term, I know, but he's decided to get away for a while, okay? And he starts having fun with his friend and neglecting his duties on the farm. He's neglecting his pet, being a bit of a petulant teenager, if you will. You know, he's like, no, I'm not answering my phone. You know, I'm gonna be a free spirit, if you will. And then the catastrophe happens. Then the tornado hits, and Jonathan steps up like a real man to save all these people and perishes in the unfortunate circumstance. Then Clark comes back and realises if he was here, he could have saved them. His dad didn't have to. His dad is just immortal, whereas Clark is immortal. You know, like, he would have been absolutely distraught to see all this damage that he could have prevented if he had just been the man that his dad wanted him to be. Superman. And that's why he goes into exile, because he's guilt-ridden and he's trying to go on a self-discovery mission, not just, oh, my dad sacrificed himself and I feel like a bit of a twat, I'm going for a holiday. No. We want to see the real pain. You know, I want to see him really, really know he fucked up. Anyway, moving on now with the story. No more flashbacks. Somehow, General Zod and his crew have escaped the Phantom Zone and are heading towards Earth to find Clark and the Codex. Wait the fucking minute. Why didn't the Kryptonians put themselves in the Phantom Zone? Because, as Zod says, when Krypton fell, they were released from the Phantom Zone. Why didn't they put themselves in the Phantom Zone and leave the Zod squad on Krypton to die? That makes more logical sense than just, well, Zod's okay, we're gonna die though. He's the criminal! He started a rebellion in the opening fucking scene and he made sure he was the safest one. So Zod's arrived on Earth and is demanding that the humans give over Kal-El. So Superman first of all surrenders to the military to form an alliance, and then surrenders himself to Zod. For some reason, bear in mind Zod has had no interaction with Earth, apart from his threatening message. He's had no interaction with Kal-El, Clark, Superman, no interaction with their military, and no interaction with Lois Lane. Yet, for some reason, when Superman gives himself over for surrender, they say, General Zod wants that woman. Why? It's not even like a collateral damage sort of thing. Like, the implication there is that Clark is obviously close to this woman. Let's bring him on board as well, you know, make him suffer a bit more sort of thing, make him a bit more compliant. He's not likely to lash out. No, no, bollocks to it. This really doesn't make sense. This was clearly a heavily implied stick it to Superman, we've got Lois Lane sort of moment, but how would they know? It just infuriates me how little sense that plan actually makes. Whilst on board Zod's ship, Zod goes into full Bond villain mode and just reveals his plan to Superman in a vast wasteland of skulls and just says, I'm going to terraform Earth. That was terrible. I'm going to terraform Earth. I sound like a redneck. I can't. How does Shannon do it? How does he make that beautiful voice work? If you couldn't understand me through the gibberish, he's going to terraform Earth into the new Krypton, killing humanity and starting life with, by one count, it was like 8 male Kryptonians and 1 female Kryptonian. I've seen the Smurfs. You try not to ask too many questions. We now come to the film's conclusion, which is highly reminiscent of an angry child with Lego, because everything gets broken. Everything is in pieces, right? I watched this in cinema, right? And although it is freaking awesome to watch Zod and Superman go toe-to-toe and annihilate half of Metropolis, God, it's so long. It is just way too much smash, and you're just like... At one point I was like, are they even feeling the pain, or is this literally just Transformers gone mad sort of thing? It's like, oh, Transformers want to blow shit up, huh? Well, guess what we're going to do? We're going to do a lot more with just people. No big robots, people. There were some entertaining spots, right? And there was like some real good acting in the fighting, you know, when like Zod's threatening Clark's mum, and then Superman comes out of nowhere and like grabs him and pushes him through the cornfield and bang, you are gonna intimidate my mother. I was sold. I was like, yeah, he's pissed. And that's pretty much it actually. It's all very generic. Slam into a building goes down, slam into another building, that building goes down. So many people must have died. It was just ridiculous. For a Superman movie, it should not have this much death. And then we get the big one, where Clark's got Zod in a headlock, and Zod's seen some humans cower in a corner, and he turns his heat vision on, he's slowly getting closer to killing them. And Superman's like, you gotta stop! And Zod's like, never! I don't know how I can't do the accent, it's too good. And then Superman commits the biggest act of controversy in this entire film. He kills Zod, snaps his neck. First of all, boo, Michael Shannon was amazing. Second of all, Superman killed. I liked it. I genuinely did. I thought this will be a great character-defining moment, especially in the sequel. I thought him finally killing someone, breaking all of his morals, regardless of the fact it was to save humans. He did something he should not do, he could never do, and he did it. Such a powerful, emotional impact moment where Superman has finally killed. Right? This was big. I loved it because I thought, what are the ramifications gonna be? Like, maybe in a future movie, like he's face to face with the Joker, and the only way to stop him at this point is to kill him, but he can't bring himself to do it, and then Joker goes ding and blows shit up everywhere. It could be incredible. But this film just annihilates any resonating feeling for this entire moment by just cutting quickly to a comedy scene where he destroys a drone, and like the military lady's like, I think he's kind of hot. This ending could have been and should have been more impactful. We could have seen him maybe hold like a funeral for Zod in space or something, like he didn't want to but had to sort of thing, and we can see this like repercussion. He could have like a real heart-to-heart with his mum, or even a heart-to-heart with Lois. This could have been a real moment, but they just skip straight to comedy. And the film finishes off with Clark Kent, with his trademark glasses disguise, joining the Daily Planet as a reporter. And that was Man of Steel. Or most of it for me was Superman Starts, because it's far too much like Batman Begins. This wasn't bad at all. I'd say it was pretty good at best. I really enjoyed most of it, but there was just certain parts that I didn't. Which brings me thankfully into my 3 good and 3 bad. Starting as always with the bad at number 3. There was just a certain lack of emotion when anyone died. Scratch that, not just emotion, but just physical pain. Watching this film again for this review, I kind of noticed it first time round, but it's almost every single person who gets a solitary death just takes it on the chin. Jor-El gets stabbed by Zod. It was my time. His mum, Clark's mum, Laura, standing watching Krypton just exploding, and it was just my time. Pfft, explosion, just gets sucked into the fire, and she's just like... And then, of course, we get Jonathan Kent's "It was just my time." I kind of think maybe an owl would be appropriate at times. I mean, like, I can only imagine what happens in future films, like, it's just my time. But Timmy, you're 12. I've lived a good life. It's ridiculous. I mean, like, I get it's like a traumatic experience, but especially the stabbing is literally just shing. You appear to have stabbed me, good sir. At number 2, and I've said this a lot throughout the entire review, but it grates at me. It's the jarring backwards and forwards. Yes, it works for Memento, but that doesn't mean it should work in a superhero origin story. We could have covered Clark being a young boy discovering he has powers and saving the kids on the bus very, very quickly. That's like 3.5 minutes worth of montage maybe, right? We can then jump to his teenage years where he watches his dad die in a tornado. That's another 1.5 minutes. We then get like maybe a 10-minute section of him in exile. As soon as he gets his suit, the film then just flows really nicely, because it's just a story playing out in front of you, and that's how, I suppose, classic film goes, start, middle, end. And I'm not saying the back and forth and the flashback is a bad style of movie making. It does work, just not here for me. It just really, really puts me off. But the number one thing I do not like about this film is the symbolism. I mean, it's just everywhere, but the moment that gets me the most is Superman is on Zod's ship, and he's with Jor-El, smashed the wall, bang, and he's looking out and sees the fiery crater, which is Lois Lane's escape pod, hurtling towards Earth. And they're both just like, Kal-El, you could be the one, Neo, you could do it all. And he's like, I know, and flies into space, and you're like, get on with it, dildo! I mean, fucking hell, just fly and save her! There's a great moment, minutes later, when he's with Lois. He goes, danger! He's off. That is how that should have been, like, danger. More of that, because that's Superman. Like, sense danger, goes at it. Not, I am Jesus! God, it drove me insane! Get on with it, you smug bastard! However, there are still some good things about this movie, and here is my 3 good, starting at number 3. This is, technically speaking, not something about the film, but it's more of my emotion, because I didn't see Superman Returns in cinema. Actually, I've only seen the first 20 minutes of it because it was boring as hell. So Man of Steel is the first Superman movie I've ever seen in cinema. It was. and it is my favourite Superman movie. The old ones need to be respected for what they were in a product of their time. It still happens to be really goofy, even by then standards, in my opinion. There's just certain things that are okay, and certain things that are like iconic. Where Superman Returns is just piss poor awful. This one, I don't know, maybe it's because it's kind of gritty and depressing. I kind of like that. I'm still kind of emo-ish, but I enjoyed it. It's the first Superman movie I enjoyed, and that's one thing I do enjoy about it. And number two, the flying scene. The second he dons that cape and he's got his fist in the ground and he shoots up and flies, the whole scene is just full of emotion, and it's just so much fun to see, and it's even better to watch the fanboys go, he's flying! It's like, okay, he flies in everything, but he's flying in this one! I get it. Like, yeah, this is like a really awesome scene. It's really, really cool. Like, it's full of great visuals, and you can just see Henry Cavill's face like, yeah, I'm Superman and I'm flying. That is it. That's the dream, guys. And I loved it. I thought it was great. But the number one thing I truly loved about this movie is General Zod. Michael Shannon just blew it out of the water for me on this one. You can't say it's a bad performance because he's playing an alien. So that means he can act however the hell he wants. And I found it fucking hilarious. Everything was taken so seriously. Like, he took every ounce of being Zod to mean, I am going to talk through my eyebrows. And it's fucking brilliant. I can't really say much more because there isn't much more he gives me, but every line is delivered through his eyebrows and his jaw. It's kind of like his teeth just didn't want to touch while he was saying his words. And some of his lines, when he delivered them softly, held some real power to them, but it's just when he starts yelling, I'm fucking on the floor laughing. It's just great. So that being said, I'm going to give this, I'm going to surprise myself here. I was going to originally rank this a lot lower, but after watching it again recently, I'm actually going to give this a 7 out of 10. I did genuinely enjoy it in cinema, and I do still enjoy it now. So, thank you so much for watching. Please feel free to like, subscribe, and as always, leave me them dirty comments. And I'll see you next time for Batman vs Superman: Dawn of Justice. Take care now. I will find him!